What's up, guys? Today I have the Gerber Bear Grylls Parang Machete here for review. I bought this at Dick's Sporting Goods for $39.99. I know that seems a little steep, but I like the Parang. The Parang is cool. Even Rambo had a Parang. How cool is that? Let's start with the sheath. There's a lot to cover, so on the outside and at first glance it looks just like every Gerber sheath that they've ever made, which is basically a nylon sock. However, this one is actually lined with plastic on the inside, and the way they designed this, you don't actually have to slide the machete in this way and cut up your sheath. It opens at the top so you can lift it right out, and there's a fold at the bottom, so it never actually pinches down on your blade and actually feels a little loose. Inside the sheath. So the sheath is actually not bad quality. Besides the fact that the blade rattles inside of it a little bit, it's actually a pretty good quality sheath coming from Gerber. It's got a nylon outside and a plastic lined inside with 2 snaps at the top and a Velcro strap, I guess, for extra retention. Also comes with this signaling diagram. Not sure who's ever going to use that, but heck, nevertheless comes with it. Now, for a second, let's talk about the packaging. And usually I don't talk about the packaging because I don't care, except in this case I can't stand bubble pack packaging. Why? Well, because you don't get to play with what's inside. When it's sealed up in something like this, all you can do is just look at it. You can't touch it, you can't see how thick the blade is, you can't feel the material on the sheath. I just don't like it. It's I think it's got a lot of marketing hype attached to it. Here you see Bear Grylls walking through the swamp. I don't even see the machete in his hand, but you know, typical of the Bear Grylls marketing campaign. Some of the stuff that I've seen at the sporting goods store has him hanging off a cliff like cliffhanger with rope sticking out of his mouth. A little bit extreme, if you ask me. So I'm wondering how much of the $39.99 price tag went to pay for the marketing that goes along with this. Also, inside the package they give you a pocket survival guide. That's this orange thing right here. And well, for me, I personally think that's pretty useless, but I guess somebody might find that useful, and goes pretty well with their marketing campaign. There's a list of features on the back of the packaging that I'm going to read to you. It says it has an angled blade, which is ideal for cutting brush or tree limbs. Has a robust high carbon steel blade, which enhances strength, corrosion resistance, and ease to sharpen. I'm not sure how high carbon steel is going to resist corrosion, but okay. The good news is it says full tang construction. Boosts durability, in case you didn't know that. They put that on there for you. Ergonomic textured rubber grip, which maximizes comfort and reduces slippage. Comes with a lanyard and a nylon sheath. It says lightweight military grade mildew resistant nylon. So not sure how true that is to a military grade spec, but it is more than what you usually get from Gerber. So not too bad right there. And comes with Priorities of Survival pocket guide, which contains Bear's survival essentials. Never gonna read it. Let's get to the specifications. Here's our spec sheet. The overall length on the machete is 19.5 inches. That's from here to the end of the handle. The blade length on it is 13.5, and by that I'm counting this area here. Out of that, the cutting area is 11.5 inches, which is this area right here. Now, Gerber is known for something that everyone calls Gerber mystery steel. They never tell you what materials they make their knives out of, or at least most of the time they don't. I did a little digging around on the internet and found on blade forums somebody who had emailed Gerber and asked them specifically for the material type, and turns out it's 1055 carbon steel. Nothing great, nothing to write home about. Same stuff as Cold Steel uses for their cheap $14 machetes. The weight with the sheath is 25.4 ounces, which is just over 1.5 pounds. And weight of the blade, just without the sheath, is 19.4 ounces, or 1.2 pounds. Thickness of this is 1/8 of an inch thick. Not a super thick blade. Very comparable, actually identical in thickness, to the Cold Steel kukri. You can see right there, exactly the same thickness as the Cold Steel kukri. Here's how they compare in size. It basically looks like an inverted kukri. Okay. Well, before we get into talking about the details of this knife, let's take a look at the history of the parang and where it originated. Because in order for you to understand the tool, you have to understand its origin. The parang is the Malay equivalent of the machete. It originated in a place called Malaysia. Malaysia is located in the East Pacific and is next to Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. It is also connected to Singapore by a causeway. The term Malay means land of the mountains, and typical vegetation in Malaysia, generally speaking, has more hardwoods than South America. It is the 43rd most populated country, and the east and west coasts are divided by the Titiwangsa Mountains. And I know what you're thinking. You wish you lived in a place that had a titty and a wang in its name too. Well, save up, dudes. The Strait of Malacca between Sumatra and peninsular Malaysia is the most important shipping lane in the world. Why is this important? With such a busy shipping lane in their backyard, goods from all over the world pass through, knives included, and the Malaysian people probably saw plenty of them and considered their designs when making their own knife, the parang. These are the facts that I found about the traditional style parang, and I want to compare this to the Gerber parang and see how well they did in mimicking the design of the originals. I'm reading off of my sheet here. So the typical vegetation in Malaysia includes more hardwoods than South America, so naturally they're going to need a thicker and heavier knife to chop through that kind of stuff. The parang is therefore optimized for a stronger chopping action with a heavier blade and the sweet spot further forward of the handle. The blade is also beveled more obtusely to prevent it from binding in the cut. Now apparently Bear Grylls wasn't listening to that part when he designed this machete. One of the things that stands out about this is the really tall grind that they put on this. And at first it looks like a Scandi grind, which, if you know anything about machetes, is not the greatest grind to put on there. But actually turns out that this is a hollow grind. What? That's right. They put a hollow grind on this machete. Now, in their defense, it's not an extreme hollow grind. It's only slightly hollowed out, but it is a hollow grind. There's also a secondary bevel. The top part of the grind, then there's a secondary bevel right here at the edge. Now, this blade is dull because I've used it, and I don't think I could even cut myself with it right now. An interesting historical fact, the parang is a weapon made by the Pekan people of Pahang. In the old days, Pahang was famous for the manufacture of fine machetes, or golaks, and was recorded in the history books in the late 1490s that Sultan Mahmud of Malacca sent a Pahang machete as one of his presents to the Pasai Sultan. Why do we care? Well, probably because you're not going to send a sultan some piece of shit, you know? So these people were probably pretty good at making these knives to the point where they were good enough to be gifted to a sultan. That's something to consider. A parang blade is usually 30 centimeters or 12 inches long, and this one happens to be just under 12 inches long, so they did good there. And has a mass of no more than 3/4 of a kilo, which is 1.7 pounds. The weight on this is 1.21 pounds without the sheath, so it's a little on the light side, and that's to be expected from something that's only 1/8 of an inch thick. The curved blade enables maximum effort to be applied when cutting timber, and the blade arrives before the knuckles, so giving them protection. This is my favorite feature of the parang. If anyone has ever used a kukri in an awkward position, you know how quickly your knuckles can eat the brush. And this is why I like the parang, is when it comes down, your knuckles are up and out of the way. So really like that about the parang. And they did good on that part by raising the handle up away from the cutting area. A parang has 3 different edges. The front is very sharp and used for skinning. The middle is wider and used for chopping. And the back end near the handle is very fine and used for carving. None of that here. But you know what? Can't blame them. If Gerber put 3 different grinds on this knife, one up front for skinning, one in the middle for chopping, and one near the handle for carving, this would be a bitch to sharpen, and I think the average person would find no benefit from having 3 different grinds put on this machete. So I'm not going to blame Gerber too much in that department. I don't care for the hollow grind that Gerber put on here. The good news is it's not extreme hollow. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it's only slightly hollowed out, and I think the more you sharpen this, the hollow part is going to wear off. And in Gerber's defense, I have tried to break this knife under reasonable conditions. I didn't put it in a vise and wail on it with a sledgehammer. I didn't try to cut it with a cutting torch, but I did go and try to split oak and cut very large trees, much larger than you would want to cut with a knife this size, just to see if I could get it to chip or break. And as you can see here, it's still in one piece. In fact, the impressive part is that there is not a single chip anywhere on this blade. And I was pretty surprised, because I was expecting to break this knife, guys. Honestly, I'm not a Gerber fan. I have not had good experiences with Gerber's knives in the past, so I was expecting a cheap quality knife that was gonna break, you know, under strenuous use, and it didn't happen. So I don't know exactly what they did to make this stronger than their previous knives, but it worked. Maybe it was the heat treatment, but honestly, having the hollow grind on here, I was expecting it to break, and it did not. So props to Gerber on that one.